What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. In today's video, I'll be going over the biggest differences in ADP at the running back position between mock drafting sites right now and paid leagues. The reasoning is pretty simple. If someone's willing to pay between like $35 and a few $1,000s for a league, then we should probably trust those ADPs a little bit more than people doing free mock drafts right now, right? Kind of makes sense. And even if maybe you don't trust the ADP in these paid leagues, well, it's at least worth seeing where the differences are and going over our thoughts on them. So that's what I'll be doing in this video. I'll actually only be looking at one side, just the players who are being taken earlier in paid leagues than in the mock drafts. I'll do the other side in a different video, and I can do the other positions as well if you'd like. So let me know in the comment section if you like this video, or just leave a like, or both. I don't know, just do something to let me know you liked it or didn't like it. So, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which tight end caught just 1 of 9 red zone targets last season, indicating potential positive regression in the touchdown department. A ton of you got it right. It was Noah Fant, but IKA8 was the first one to guess it correctly. Today's stat. Which 3 quarterbacks led the league with 4 red zone interceptions? Not something you want to be doing. So 4 red zone picks, 3 quarterbacks had that. You can make one guess, and then I'll just count like the first 3 people who get those names right. That makes sense. But only one guess. Don't be listing 50 names. Before we start, a reminder that I can only go over a few players in these videos. So if you want our take on every player, along with our exact rankings, check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And also, if you prefer to just listen to the audio on this, maybe you don't like the YouTube app or something, then we do upload these as a podcast to iTunes and Spotify, and a link to that is always in the description, along with the timestamps. So if you always want to just skip right to the first player, I always put the timestamps in the description. So let's talk about some running backs. Remember, these are guys being taken earlier in paid leagues than they are on like Yahoo, ESPN, Fantasy Football Calculator, sites like that. The player with the biggest difference is Zack Moss. And you guys already know where I stand on this one. Moss is one of my favorite late round picks because of the potential upside. They refused to use Singletary near the goal line last season, and he was extremely inefficient in the receiving game. I'm not saying he's a bad receiving back, just pointing out a fact. He was inefficient in that area. Now, this season, they used the exact same draft capital on Zack Moss as they did with Singletary, or at least very, very close to the same pick. And Moss is a running back who, while he had a pretty bad combine, is more than capable of taking the goal line job and more than capable of taking some third down snaps and targets as well. So even without an injury, I think he can push to have a decent role in the offense, and an injury would instantly make him a featured back. So that's exactly the type of player you target late in drafts. So I completely agree with the paid leagues that Moss is being undervalued right now. The second biggest difference goes to J.K. Dobbins. I was a little surprised with this one, but he's being taken in like the late 4th to early 5th round in the paid leagues, and that's a lot ahead of his ADP on these mock draft sites. But it's where I said in a video about a month ago, I do kind of expect him to go. We have talked about him in a few videos so far, but my overall take is this. He has top 5 upside if Ingram went down, right? You're not going to find anyone who's going to argue with that. Like, if this is basically his job, Justice Hill will get some third down work, but Dobbins would step into a near featured role if Ingram got hurt, and that would be a league winner. So I understand the upside. But while he'll be useful if that doesn't happen, he'll definitely be hard to trust, at least for the first half of the season. Because I truly believe first half of the season, there's just no way Dobbins takes over as the lead back. It's possible midway through the year and into end of the year that he does take over the majority of the snaps. Not all of them. There's no way he's going to have like an 80-20 split, but maybe it splits to like 60-40 in his favor in the second half of the year. My problem with taking him in the 4th and 5th round is the unknown. We think he's really good, and I think he's going to have a decent role, but we don't know for sure. We don't know if he'll ever take over the majority of the snaps this season. So love him in Dynasty because I do think in like a year or two he's going to just be the guy and he's going to be fantastic. But it's really tough to say exactly how many touches he's going to have. And so until we get more news on that, I don't see how you could spend a 4th round pick on him. So I think his correct ADP is somewhere in the middle. I think it's a little bit later than the paid leagues, but a little bit earlier than where he's going in mock drafts right now. That's my take on that. Another player is Jonathan Taylor. Ton of rookies differences, but it's also interesting. I'm going to go over another rookie in a second. I think some of these rookies are being overvalued. I think some of these rookies are being undervalued by these paid leagues. They do have Jonathan Taylor ahead of ADP by a decent margin. I do agree with this one. I'm not going to go in depth because I've already done him like twice in the past week. But in short, I agree. The offensive line, I guess you could argue that it's not the best, but it's for sure top 3. So it's an elite offensive line. It's going to be a good offense. We know the touchdowns are going to be there because they're going to score and they're not going to throw for every touchdown. And even though he's a rookie, there are players that we just know are going to be great right out of college, and Taylor's one of those players. So given that there is enough volume for him to finish as a mid to high-end running back 2, even with Max staying healthy for the full season, there's no reason not to love him and love his talent and love his situation. So especially when you consider the upside, I agree with that. Another player is Damien Williams. They have Williams much ahead of where he is going on average right now. I don't agree with this one. I don't see them using Damien Williams enough unless Clyde gets hurt, because I just don't see why they would spend a 1st round pick on Clyde but then use Williams more. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. I do not think this is similar to a Penny and Carson situation. So I'm sure people who argue against Clyde and for Williams are going to point to that. They're going to say, well, the Seahawks took Penny, what was it, like 27th overall, somewhere around there, and then they used Carson more. Well, now part of that was due to injuries, and part of that was due to people didn't really think they should have taken Penny that high because, it wasn't that fantastic of a prospect. But I was higher on Clyde than almost anyone going into the draft. I think he's a fantastic running back, and in this offense, you don't need to be all that good to put up numbers, right? So it's extremely likely that he's going to have a great season, at least from a per touch basis. And if he's playing great and they spent a 1st round pick on him, what kind of rationale would that be to say, oh, you're playing great, we have a ton of draft capital invested in you, okay, we're going to go with this other running back? That doesn't make any sense, because remember, we loved Williams last season because of the upside, and he showed, the upside is there. But let's not forget who he is. He's a 28-year-old undrafted running back with elevated injury risk who, despite a 91-yard rushing touchdown last season, has still never been over 500 rushing yards in a season. So I view Williams much more like an elite handcuff and not someone you should ever be taking in the late 6th round, because he's not the best running back on the roster, and they're not dumb. They're going to use the best running back. The best running back is Clyde. So I don't think his ADP in these paid leagues is correct. Another player they like more than ADP is Miles Sanders. We're back on players I completely agree with. There's been a lot of talk about the Eagles adding a veteran running back in free agency, but at least as of recording this, that has not happened yet. And even when it does, is there really anyone that we'd be concerned with? Not really, right? Hyde was the one player. If they had gotten Carlos Hyde, I would have been concerned and I would have dropped him a decent amount in the rankings. But other than that, who is this veteran free agent that we're worried they might sign? Whoever they end up adding, if they even add anyone, will be much more of a downgrade to Boston Scott's value than they will Miles Sanders. he should be locked into those 15 to 18 touches a week, which is 240 to 288 over a full season. And that's more than enough for him to finish as a running back 1, especially when you consider it's a really good offense, so the touchdown's going to be there, and he should be involved in the receiving game. Those, even if you hit the low end, 240 touches, a lot of those are receptions. So I think he's going to have a great year. I think he's being undervalued right now as well. Final player we'll go over is another rookie, DeAndre Swift. They're taking him in like the mid to early 4th round. And honestly, that's a bit early for my liking. I have him as more of a mid to late 5th round pick, which I like a lot more. And it really comes down to what it always does in risk. The 4th round is just too early, especially when we don't know exactly what his role will be on the offense. I do think he'll be involved in the receiving game. I do think he's better than Kerryon Johnson. But let's not forget that they spent the exact same draft capital 2 years ago on Kerryon Johnson, and it's not like he's some scrub. Like, he's a really solid running back that's just had a little bit of trouble staying healthy. So it makes sense that they would want to add another running back that's really good to ease the workload on Kerryon, so they don't need to give him 18 touches per game. They can drop that to like 9 to 12 and keep him healthy for the full season. So while that might mean Swift is the 1A, it means that it might mean that. Just like Dobbins, I want a lot more clarity on this split, what it's expected to be, before I'd consider using a 4th round pick on Swift. There are a lot of players going in that range where I know exactly what their value is and exactly how they're going to be used in the offense, and it's a lot. So if I'm sure other players are going to be used a ton in the offense in that range, why am I spending a pick on a player who might be used a lot in the offense? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So until we have more clarity, I'm not touching him at that ADP. Although he's going that early in the paid leagues, right now he is still going a little bit later in mock drafts. So those are the running backs being taken earlier in paid leagues than they are on mock drafting sites right now. Let me know if you want to see more videos similar to this one, whether it's for different positions or players being overvalued instead of undervalued. That's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.